What? A university has been fined for not upholding freedom of speech. And as it transpires, it's wrapped up in all this trans pish. Whereas, I'm going to run it on the BBC, but synopsis, teacher gets sacked for not toeing the line on the trans PC subscribed what to think stuff, gets sacked, and now the school is getting fined, the college is getting fined for doing so. So let's have a look. A wee look and a listen.
The University of Sussex has been fined more than £500,000 by the UK's higher education regulator for failing to uphold freedom of speech. It follows the case of Professor Kathleen Stock, who left the university after facing accusations of transphobia for her views on biological sex. The university says the fine is disproportionate and will challenge it. Here's our education editor, Branwen Jeffries.
There were posters and protests calling for Professor Stock to be sacked. She'd questioned whether gender identity was more important than biological sex. As a result of the pressure, Kathleen Stock resigned in 2021. Afterwards, she talked about it in a BBC interview.
This was the culmination of quite a long process, and it had been really unpleasant to work there for several years. I was pretty worn down by it.
The university had a policy in place at the time. It said courses had to represent trans people positively and warned transphobic abuse or bullying was a serious offence. The Office for Students said the trans and non-binary policy had a chilling effect with the potential for staff and students to self-censor. In a statement, the University of Sussex said the investigation was unreasonable and the ruling would leave universities powerless to prevent abusive, bullying speech. The size of the fine is likely to send shockwaves through universities. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, said free speech was non-negotiable, and where it was not upheld, robust action would be taken. Branwen Jeffries, BBC News.
With me now is Sasha Roseneal, who is Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sussex. Thank you very much for coming in. Your reaction to the fine?
I think it's extortionate. Academic freedom and freedom of speech are absolutely the cornerstone of universities. But this wasn't an investigation into Professor Stock's experience at Sussex, which was deeply regrettable, and it wasn't actually an investigation into whether academic freedom and freedom of speech was upheld. It was actually just a trawl of documents, hundreds, thousands of pages of documents, which alighted on one document which the regulator has taken issue with. They didn't interview anyone during the course of that from the university. I tried repeatedly to get to speak to the Office for Students. 3.5 years and they didn't speak to anyone who worked at the university. It was an entirely paper-based exercise, and we had already made a number of changes to that one document, and the OFS has never given us any feedback through the whole 3.5 years about whether it was acceptable or not, the changes that we made.
The OFS says this followed a thorough investigation. It talks mainly about this policy, the policy statement on trans and non-binary equality, saying that your requirement to positively represent trans people and an assertion that transphobic propaganda would not be tolerated could lead staff and students to self-censor. Are you saying that does not happen, that has not happened?
Well, the positive representation statement we actually changed within a couple of weeks of my arrival at the university. I do think that was a problematic statement. But the implication of this ruling is that universities couldn't have policies that said that we wouldn't allow, for instance, anti-Semitic propaganda, anti-Muslim propaganda, as well as anti-trans propaganda, or indeed anti-gender critical propaganda. We would have to allow anything in the university that wasn't actually illegal. So it's actually a form of free speech absolutism, which makes universities ungovernable. We couldn't have codes of conduct, expectations of behaviour that were about civil behaviour, about respectful dialogue.
The Education Secretary recently said that free speech and academic freedom were non-negotiables in universities, and where these principles weren't upheld, robust action will be taken. This seems to be an example of that, and therefore this non-negotiable in the University of Sussex, in the view of the OFS, has not been upheld.
Well, freedom of speech and academic freedom are absolutely foundational in universities, but it's also vitally important that we create cultures of dialogue, of respectful civil debate and discussion. And there are sometimes tensions around a number of issues. We've just been hearing about the protests, student protests in Turkey. You know, students are lively, universities are places of debate. We have to be able to have codes of conduct and expectations of civil, respectful behaviour that where it isn't just the law that is the baseline expectation.
Civil, respectful behaviour, which absolutely wasn't the case in 2021 when Professor Kathleen Stock resigned. She ended up having to employ security guards for her own safety, as you know. She hasn't commented on this at this stage, but I mean, does the university
Crackpots, man.
admit any wrongdoing, lack of support in the way she was treated?
So the circumstances around Professor Stock's departure, she resigned from the university, are deeply regrettable. The university consistently supported her academic freedom and freedom of speech. But this wasn't actually an investigation into what happened to Professor Stock, although she was the only person who was actually interviewed in the process of this investigation. But the OFS doesn't have powers to actually investigate such things. It was just looking at our documents. And the only evidence that there was any impact of that one document, which has to be said has been adopted by dozens of universities across the country, the only evidence was given by Professor Stock, and they didn't interview anyone else at the university about it. So I don't think that there is a finding here that academic freedom and freedom of speech haven't been upheld. There are some concerns that there were some statements in that document that might have been seen to impinge on academic freedom and freedom of speech, but no evidence that actually had any impact.
Can I ask you very briefly in the time we have, what implications practically is this fine going to have?
Well, universities are, really many universities, all universities are struggling financially, and the Office for Students has been directed by the government to focus actually on financial sustainability, not on waging the culture wars. I mean, the scale of this fine is the equivalent to a significant number of jobs. We are doing everything we can to protect jobs, and I absolutely do not want this to mean that we have to lose staff. But the OFS has been reckless about the financial implications of this fine.
You're going to appeal.
And we are going to take it to judicial review, yes.
Sasha Rose-Neal, thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sussex. Now, Prince Harry fined from his own charity, Centre Barley, which helps.
There we have it, man. Everybody getting their knickers in a twist about this trans shit is just isn't going away, man. And I think I must have heard about that at the time. That professor getting ran out of Dodge by fucking crackpots because she dared to suggest, what was it, biological sex is more important than what gender you subscribe to yourself, man. Try to think of an maybe I'm crazy. That make me crazy. Bodyguards and all that, you know what I mean? Like fucking dudes in fucking dresses swinging their dicks at you, man. Like, what the fuck is this? Oh man, it doesn't matter what crackpot cult you're subscribing to, man. Everybody's fucking arseholes are like that. Thanks to everybody being tuned to the moon on the windy licking devices. Because you bet your bottom dollar all those fucking crackpots that done that to that fucking professor would have been online. Did you see egging each other on, looking for the next best fucking video. Look what I've done to this anti-trans. Oh, fuck off, man. Go and find a fucking boozer where you can get drunk and have fun in your fucking Fruit Loops. And I think she's the head of that Sussex University. Tried to regulate it, like it was focusing on one bit of it. The poor woman, because of your stupid fucking policies and upholding them, get ran out of Dodge. Because of Fruit Loops, and you should have been kicking out the fucking students that were stupid enough to participate in that fucking hate campaign against a woman, a professor, an intellectual who went like, there's biological sex is more important, and if you feel like a fucking tree today, You get knocked down and you're in the hospital, man, you best tell them fucking what was between your legs when you were born. Or you're not going to get the right fucking care, fucking idiots. Sitting there all mangled up and all that, need to know what fucking sex you are with fucking to give you the right treatment, and you're like, with all the blood and pus and all that. I identify with being a blobfish. Get it. Got it. Good. Get cheese. No cats, no cheese. Maybe only some trannies were armed in as well.